Welcome, everyone, to the December 10th Agenda Review meeting. I'm Tim Hill, and assisting me is Director Amy Brooks and Attorney Tasha Blakeney, and the folks attending, fellow commissioners. Merry Christmas. At this time, I'll turn it over to Director Brooks.
Thank you. I just have a few updates on staff activities over the last month or so. Information Services staff delivered their annual report to the public school enrollment projection model for Knox County schools. As you all might recall, each year our staff map student addresses, measure the generation of new school-age children from new residential construction. We evaluate movement of students through grade progressions. We do projections related to local bursts to populate kindergarten cohorts 5 years in the future, and examine subdivision lot inventory additions and consumption, all of which are used as key inputs into the projection model. Our GIS team is the one that leads this type of work for Knox County Schools and has for a number of years. So Knox County Schools uses this to inform their annual projections and capital planning efforts. UDO, as I mentioned last month, we are underway. Our consultants are digging in to this work. We had an internal kickoff meeting with the consultants that included county and planning staff a couple weeks ago. And we should have some updates to our website to reflect where we are in the process and where we expect to be over the next few months. So stay tuned, and I'll be sure to send out links to that information once it goes live. You all have heard me mention the Breathe project that we have been partnering, the TPO really has been partnering with the City of Knoxville Sustainability Office. There's been several stakeholder meetings that have been held. We had a kickoff webinar in August, followed by a round of in-person meetings in October, and a round of virtual meetings in November and early December. These were organized by sector, natural working lands, agriculture and waste, and then we had one on transportation and land use, and buildings and energy, and additional themes of equity and community considerations and workforce and business development. And so these groups are helping guide the drafting of measures for the plan. We have more information loaded up on our website, and after this meeting, I'll send you all links to that in case you're interested in checking it out. The second round of mobility plan outreach has concluded, and a summary of that work is available at knoxmobility.org. And just a reminder, so this room is going to undergo some additional renovations over the next couple months. So our January and February agenda review meeting, as well as the main meeting, will take place in the small assembly room. And we'll send out reminders in advance of those meetings. And that's all I have. So now we'll get into the review of agenda items, starting with items 16 and 17, which are appeal of a middle housing administrative appeal of a middle housing denial. I'll turn over to Ms. Crockett.
Okay, so Article 4.6.g in the Middle Housing Standards allows appeals of planning staff approvals or denials to the Planning Commission. This is similar to Level 1 certificates of appropriateness that may be approved or denied in the infill housing or historic overlays that can be appealed to the broader bodies, the DRB or the Historic Zoning Commission. So the first appeal, 12B24OB, is an appeal of 10E24MH, which is a middle housing application at 1214 Callaway Street. So the property is zoned RN4. Currently, the applicant rezoned the property from RN2 to RN4 in August 2024. The RN4 allows for multiple primary structures on one lot. This lot is a non-conforming lot of record, so it's 30 feet wide by approximately 135 feet deep. So under the current zoning standards, development of this lot is permitted, including using the middle housing standards. The application includes two parts. First, the conversion of an existing single-family house to a duplex. You can see the streetscape of the block in the bottom right photo with a photo of the house in question. It's a single-story shotgun house. It's a relatively small historic house form, narrow in plan. It's contributing to the mechanical Mechanicsville National Register Historic District, but it's not in the local overlay. So the conversion is via interior renovation and the enclosure of the side porch. The conversion was approved. It does meet the applicable standards for conversions. The second aspect of the project was denied. This is the conversion of a new duplex behind the existing side structure. So it was denied not only because it does not meet the front setback requirements or the interior side setback requirements, but it does not meet the intent of the middle housing standards. So you can see the site plans here. The initial submission is on the left, and a revised copy the applicant provided after the denial was issued is on the right. You can see the conversion of the primary structure here, and then a second two-story duplex that will feature one unit on each floor with a garage door fronting the alley. And then I'll run through the intent of the middle housing standards after going through both of these projects. So number 17, which is 12C24OB, is also an appeal of a planning staff denial. This property was rezoned by the applicant from RN2 to RN4 in July 2023. The lot is 75 feet wide by approximately 135 feet deep. So this is another two-part application. The first half includes the conversion of an existing single-family house to a duplex, and it will be converted via interior renovation, the addition of a new side porch, and reconstruction of the house's rear roof line. This section was approved as it meets applicable standards for conversions in 4.6.f. The second section, which was denied, is the construction of 3 new two-story duplexes behind the existing structure. So it was denied based on setback requirements, but also it does not meet the intent of middle housing standards. So you can see the site plan here. These will be 2 new two-story stacked duplexes. That's parking indicated on the rear. And the elevation drawings, these were revised from the initial submission. These are in the packet. So speaking to the intent of the middle housing standards, as stated in the intro to the standards, middle housing is intended to promote the development of neighborhood-scale housing forms that are compatible with existing housing in the area. And the design standards are intended to generate new buildings that are similar in footprint, height, and setbacks with the existing neighborhood. So the middle housing standards already allow for more flexible development of land than is possible under the base zoning, but they are not intended to maximize what's possible on a single lot. So under the current base zoning, because the first lot, 1214 Callaway Street, is a non-conforming lot of record, and then combining that with the RN4 zoning, that allows for multiple primary structures regardless of lot width, lots, or building size, or building configuration. So in terms of the broader discussion of the middle housing standards, the current iteration of our standards were not written to address multiple structures on one lot, especially those that are closer in form, scale, and placement to ADUs than primary structures. You may recall the graphics from the code adoption process that show the streetscapes of single-family houses with compatible multi-unit buildings mixed in. They're similar in footprint and placement on the lot. Our standards of middle housing, the concept of middle housing more broadly does address multiple structures on one lot, but we have not incorporated these standards yet. That's through the cottage court concept, which aims, this is a quote from the book, to create a sense of community and consistency within a lot. So you can see those illustrations on the right side of the screen. They have additional standards related to building size and height, building arrangement, and a shared public space, typically from a courtyard. And stacking, the denial was based on stacking new two-story multi-unit buildings fronting alleys is incompatible with the neighborhood context, and the two applications don't reflect that cottage court concept. So this element is more related to the new standards. We do hope to incorporate new standards for cottage courts in the near future, and I'm available to answer questions about the planning staff denial.
If the proposed structures were single story, would that be okay? Was the two-story kind of the primary hang-up?
No, I think the denial is not based on the height of the structures.
Okay.
Duplexes are permitted to be 2 stories
Okay.
in the middle housing standards.
Just to clarify, the missing middle housing regulations that we approved, do they exclude multiple, or they just don't address them, period?
They do not address them.
Okay. But RN4 does allow for multiple buildings on one site, correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 18. I don't believe we have a presentation for this one, but I'll turn it over to Andrea.
Hello, everyone. Let's see. Can you hear me? This is Agenda 18, which is Planning Case 12SA24F. It's the final plat of Phase 2 of Isabel Estates. Phase 1 of the subdivision created 66 lots, and this plat is proposing an additional 24 lots. Staff is recommending denial of the case as the applicant has not satisfied all the conditions of the concept plan. Required revisions to the plat were not completed, and the applicant has not agreed to postpone the case. The property is zoned planned residential for up to 3 dwelling units per acre, and it's surrounded by agricultural zoning except for an adjacent property on Brackett Road, which is also zoned planned residential. You can see from the 2024 aerial imagery that the roads of the subdivision have been constructed or are under construction, and the development of several lots has begun. The concept plan for Isabel Estates was approved in October 2021 for 90 lots. There were conditions imposed. Condition number 3 of the approval stipulates up to 66 lots may be platted prior to either a left turn lane on East Emery Road being installed by the applicant or future improvements to East Emery Road that include an eastbound left turn lane at the Brackett Road intersection. Neither of these improvements have been completed. The plat for Phase 1 of Isabel Estates created 66 lots, and that was approved in November of 2023. This is the maximum number of lots allowed before condition number 3 applies and improvements are required to East Emery Road. The proposed plat for Phase 2 creates an additional 24 lots, resulting in a total of 90 lots in the Isabel Estates subdivision. As neither of the required road improvements have been completed, the applicant and EPW discussed alternatives to satisfy the condition of the concept plan. Both TDOT and County Law Department concur the developer needs to install the left turn lane as required by the concept plan. Until such road improvements occur, the condition of the concept plan remains, and the final plat cannot be approved. In addition to the required road improvements, revisions to the plat itself are necessary. Planning provided initial comments to the applicant on October 16th. However, a revised plat was never submitted to satisfy these comments. If the plat is approved by Planning Commission as shown on the agenda, it will have numerous errors and will not comply with the subdivision regulations. Because the applicant has not agreed to postpone their request, Planning's recommendation is to deny the application for the final plat. As a reminder, the Planning Commission only has the authority to approve or deny the request or to postpone it with the applicant's consent, and the applicant has not consented to postponement.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. So now we will move on to agenda item number 9. This is Calvary Chapel of Knoxville. Take just a minute to switch over and I'll turn on Ms. Hillman.
This is a special use request for the expansion of Calvary Chapel, a place of worship located on a 42-acre lot at the corner of Alcoa Highway and West Governor John Sevier Highway, with access to Topside Road to the south. The proposed expansion of the sanctuary and the parking lot also triggered a Level 2 hillside protection certificate of appropriateness case because they're exceeding their permitted disturbance by 1.23 acres. The building addition will add 2,231 sanctuary seats to the existing building, which will remain with its 658 seats, for a total of 2,889 seats. There is an existing parking lot with 580, I'm sorry, they're proposing to add 580 parking spaces to the existing 322 for a total of 902 parking spaces. And they'll also be creating an additional egress for the parking lot to the main driveway. The traffic impact analysis projects a level of service rating of F in most directions on West Governor John Sevier Highway during peak church hours. An F rating indicates a breakdown in traffic flow with excessive delays and stop-and-go conditions. This is concerning, especially considering the church's location at the interchange of two major highways. It's worth noting that the traffic analysis only accounts for the number of seats of the new building and not those seats in addition to the original building, which will remain. This is because we were assured that the original sanctuary would be used for children's programming exclusively, which would not increase vehicular traffic. Since peak hours for a church do not coincide with peak hours for traffic generally, City and County Engineering and TDOT were accepting of the traffic projections on the condition that all recommendations of the traffic analysis be implemented. This includes having a Knoxville Police Department officer present to direct traffic during peak hours. While this service cannot be guaranteed, it is encouraging that the traffic engineer who conducted this analysis noted that a police officer was already present when he did his site visit. So this is a practice they're already implementing. This traffic congestion on West Governor John Sevier Highway will result in more traffic being directed to the church's secondary access on Topside Road, which is an 18-foot wide minor collector street that serves surrounding residents. And there has been concern from neighbors about this increase in traffic congestion on that road. The proposed parking lot and driveway expansion will exceed the permitted disturbance within the hillside protection overlay by 1.23 acres. Staff are recommending approval of this level 2 hillside protection case because there are utility easements outside of the church's control that eat into their disturbance budget. We're recommending approval on the condition that an area of property equivalent to the disturbance excess be reforested in coordination with the City of Knoxville's Urban Forestry Division. The report notes that our urban forester estimates that it would take about 860 tree seedlings to reforest 1.23 acres. Staff did reach out to explain this condition to the applicant. We offered to conduct a site visit with the city's urban forester to review the feasibility of planting locations and discuss costs. This invitation was declined, and instead a lawyer was hired to oppose the condition, claiming that the cost is a substantial burden on the free exercise of religion. The price for a tree seedling ranges from 18 cents to $2.50 per tree. So 860 tree seedlings would cost approximately $2,000. This cost could be reduced by partnering with a nonprofit like Trees Knoxville, and this replanting could be implemented with a single-day volunteer effort. It does not require a contractor. Staff met in advance with our legal counsel in anticipation of this argument, and it was determined that this condition is not a substantial cost burden in the context of the proposed multi-million-dollar expansion. The other argument in the opposition letter is that they were previously informed by planning that they were exempt from the hillside protection overlay in 2021. This is true, and it was an error. One way that a property may be exempt from hillside protection is if a grading permit was issued for the lot prior to the adoption of the zoning code in 2020. Calvary was issued a grading permit, but not for the entire lot. It was for the satellite parking lot. It's hard to see in the image, but it's about a 3,000 square foot satellite parking lot, and the circled in red in the upper right image. And that parking lot grading permit does not mean the entire 42-acre property is exempt from hillside protection. This error was explained to the applicant multiple times, and the hillside protection overlay has been applied in 3 subsequent special use cases. Another argument in the letter is that the code provides an exemption for areas that have been previously disturbed. They interpret this to mean that since 3.8 acres has been disturbed by utility easements, that the applicant can then disturb 3.8 acres within the hillside protection overlay elsewhere on the site. That's not the interpretation of planning or plans review and inspection. It's intended that you can redisturb areas that have been previously disturbed. It does not mean you can apply that area of prior disturbance elsewhere on the site. This argument has been presented in the past on a previous level 2 hillside protection case, and at that time, the Planning Commission upheld staff's interpretation. It's also worth noting that Alcoa Highway and West Governor John Sevier Highway are both state-designated scenic roadways, which are intended to highlight the natural beauty of the surrounding roadways. The replanting condition is consistent with that state recognition as well. Staff will be slightly revising the wording of this condition to be more flexible. It currently states that 1.23 acres within the hillside protection overlay on the property should be reforested. A desktop analysis, which is shown in the lower left, indicates that that is feasible, but on the ground, it may make more sense to plant other areas of the site that are not necessarily within the overlay. So it will instead read as shown in this slide, where it's just 1.23 acres of the subject property in coordination with urban forestry. I also used the word sapling instead of seedling in the report, and that will be corrected. A seedling is what you see in the center image. Considering the intensive nature of this special use request and the apparent adverse impact on traffic for the surrounding area, staff maintain that all the conditions of approval of the special use and the hillside protection case are reasonable and proportionate and should be applied. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple questions. Is there, and I'm genuinely curious, is there a provision in the hillside ordinance or the other ordinances where you talk about the grading permit having to be applied to the entire lot, or is it just, like, for example, I'm looking at it now and like, it just says grading permit, so is there language elsewhere that says that the grading permit has to be for the whole lot, or is that just planning's interpretation?
It is written that it's a grading permit for the lot, and how that is interpreted by those who execute the code, plans, review, and inspections, is that if you have a 3,000 square foot parking lot grading permit, it doesn't mean the entire lot is exempt.
Okay, thanks. And then my similar question for it's B4, it's the same provision we were talking about, where we talk about disturbance has to be on the land that's already disturbed. It's a similar issue, in my opinion, where the language doesn't say that. It just says, it defines disturbance, which we would all know as like changing the land conditions, basically. But it doesn't say anything about disturbing the land that's already been disturbed. So, like, it's the same question, like, is there language elsewhere, or is this plans review and inspections interpretation again?
There is, I can reference the prior level 2 hillside case where that argument was made. It was 8A23 HPA. And in that package, there is a letter from Plans Review and Inspections explaining how that is interpreted.
Okay, cool. Thank you, I was just curious.
I just have a kind of a review question, because this is a special use, and I know that in the city, we can't do conditional zoning, and this isn't a rezoning, it's a special use, but in that case, we can prescribe specific conditions to meet for that approval. And that's what you were listing out.
Yes, so there's the special use condition, there's also the condition for approval of the level 2 hillside protection case. And they're tied.
I had one, I guess, quick clarification. When you were talking about replanting or reforesting and got into voluntary efforts and things like that, there's not anything in there that says they have to irrigate it or anything like that. You're literally just talking about putting the seedling in.
The condition is written that they would coordinate with urban forestry on a reforestation effort. It would be with seedlings, which you just punch them in the ground. And then some sort of, MOU or understanding would be established with urban forestry in terms of the maintenance agreement.
Yeah, I guess that's my experience or curiosity about that is, it's not as much about, I think, the act of planting, a small seedling. You just get a little divot tool and you walk through there and plant it. We've done it. We've reforested things before. I think where the cost comes in on a lot of that, you'd mentioned a couple $1,000s or something. It's not cost prohibitive, but if there is some sort of requirement that says you have to irrigate it or, make sure that it grows and that type of thing, because that's the risk. I mean, if you get into 2 acres of hillside, and you plant it, if you get lucky, you hit the right weather, but if you don't, if it's in August, it'll never last. It'll never reforest. I mean, it'll eventually regrow, but it just won't be as clean as that. So I just wanted to make sure, I guess, from a cost perspective, if there is some sort of requirement of irrigation, that's when the cost really gets really high. So that's why I wanted to kind of make sure that wasn't in there, I guess, is my point.
It's not in there explicitly, but some sort of maintenance agreement in coordination with urban forestry is in there.
Okay, well, okay, thank you.
Is it possible to have someone from one of those organizations that they could be partnering with or entering into an MOU with present during Thursday's session, just to hear from people who are more specialist than we are?
I can reach out to Casey Krause, who's the city's urban forester, and see if someone can be present to explain the process for planting and maintaining.
To Commissioner Huebner's point, I think that might be helpful just to understand what are the ramifications there and the feasibility. I remember some case a few months ago where there was question about the viability of specific landscape buffer or something that had been prescribed about would it survive or not. So it seems like it could be helpful to have
Yeah, I
that.
think it certainly, I mean, to me, it's more about what are the expectations. I mean, I get MOU it's somewhat loose, but expectations, I'm sure, that's all the applicant, I'm sure, is looking for is, okay, this might be open-ended. I know if I was making an application and they said, well, you just got to go reforest that. Okay, what's that mean? So anyway, I think that would be helpful if they're available.
Yeah, and again, we did reach out to the applicant to have this conversation and do a site visit and explain this prior to getting to this point.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 26.
This is a county rezoning request to increase the planned residential density from 2.5 dwelling units per acre to 5 dwelling units per acre. It's a 34-acre property on Shipe Road, east of Washington Pike. As you can see, this property is in an area that is rural in character and predominantly comprised of large single-family lots, farmland, and forest. The subject property is bisected by a blue line stream, and the southern half has steeper forested slopes. These conditions are consistent with the intent of the PR zone to conserve more environmentally sensitive areas, but it does not necessarily support an increase in the existing intensity of 2.5 dwelling units per acre, which would already yield 85 units on this lot. Since 2003, there has been a moderate transition in land use towards single-family residential subdivisions to the north and southwest, built at densities no greater than 3 dwelling units per acre. There is one small townhouse subdivision further down, built at a density of 4.5 dwelling units per acre, but it has direct access to Washington Pike. The subject property was previously in the rural area, but was incorporated into an expanded planned growth area when the growth policy plan was updated this year. Although there has been a policy change regarding the amount of residential intensity that can be considered here, the current conditions do not support the requested increase to 5 dwelling units per acre. The existing density is consistent with local trends in residential subdivision development, which have densities no greater than 2 dwelling units per acre where access is on a collector street and not an arterial like Washington Pike. This property has the rural conservation place type. The existing density is consistent with the intent of the RC place type to accommodate residential development that conserves 50% to 70% of the site. And Staff are recommending denial of the PR request to increase to 5 dwelling units per acre because it's consistent with the property's location in the planned growth area, which states that housing choices should be coordinated with the provision of adequate roads, utilities, schools, and other facilities and services. This property does not have access to nearby schools, parks, community centers, or commercial amenities. There are no capital improvements planned to expand the surrounding roads, which are all approximately 20 feet wide, 2 lanes and lacking shoulders, even on this section of the arterial Lake Washington Pike. I believe the applicant will be revising their request at the Planning Commission meeting to 3 dwelling units per acre. Staff maintain that the existing density is what's most appropriate here, given current conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Move on to agenda item number 30.
12G 24RZ, this is a county rezoning request to rezone a 19.28 acre parcel from agricultural and general business to general residential. This property accesses Clinton Highway and is near its intersection with Shad Road, just to the west. This property is located between the established single-family Cherrybrook neighborhood to the northwest and service-oriented commercial businesses along the major arterial corridor. It's also less than a quarter mile from a large commercial node to the west, with Northwest Crossing and Crown Point Plaza shopping centers at the intersection of Clinton Highway and Shad Road. RB zoning at this location would be a minor extension of the zone to the property. The requested RB zone is directly related to the suburban mixed residential place type designated in the comprehensive plan. RB zoning is also supported by the property's location in the urban growth boundary of the growth policy plan. Staff are recommending approval of the RB zone because it's a logical extension of the zone that provides a transition of land use intensity. The surrounding amenities and transportation infrastructure support more intensive residential development here. The reason this case is being covered here is because there has been community opposition from the Cherrybrook neighborhood, citing concerns that include stormwater runoff, degrading the natural environment, and an increase in noise from Clinton Highway with the loss of tree canopy. In light of this, we will be adding a condition to maintain or replace a buffer of tree canopy along the northwest edge of the property. That will be coming your way for review later today. And we've discussed that with the applicant and are waiting to hear back on their response to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. We're going to move on to agenda item number 22 and number 27. These are both rezoning cases.
One moment, sorry. All right, item 22, 11-A24RZ. This is a request to rezone a 5-acre property located on the north side of Ball Camp Pike, west of Valley Grove Lane, from planned residential up to 3 dwelling units an acre to planned residential with up to 8 dwelling units an acre. This
case was presented at last month's agenda review, so for the sake of time, I will try to be brief. The subject property is accessed from Ballcamp Pike, a major collector street with a 19-foot pavement width within a right-of-way ranging from 50 to 74 feet. In 2022, the subject property was rezoned from agricultural to PR up to 3 dwelling units an acre. The density of 3 dwelling units an acre was approved as it was consistent with the surrounding development accessed off of Ballcamp Pike. Since the 2022 rezoning, there have not been any changes on the ground at this section of Ballcamp Pike. This past September, the parcel abutting the subject property on the north side was rezoned from agricultural to PR with up to 8 dwelling units an acre, subject to 2 conditions. A letter was received from the applicant's representative regarding the difference in recommendations between this parcel and the subject property, as the abutting parcel was approved with 2 conditions. The first condition for that approval was that ensuring access to Shawd Road was available, and if access was not feasible, the property owner may be required to make appropriate requirements to Ballcamp Pike as deemed necessary by the Knox County Engineering and Public Works Department. The second condition was that no grading permit should be issued until the construction of Shawd Road was complete. The 2 conditions placed on the rezoning heavily emphasize the parcel's frontage along the new Shawd Road. Though the 2 properties are contiguous, rezonings are reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and the subject property has only frontage off of Ballcamp Pike. Currently, it does not have legal access to Shawd Road. We contacted the applicant about the 2 properties, and they informed us that they were separate projects and not part of a unified development. The proposed density of 8 dwelling units an acre could yield up to 40 lots. This density is inconsistent with the development along this 1.5-mile stretch of Ballcamp Pike between Bakertown Road and Amherst Road. Subdivisions accessed directly off of Ballcamp Pike are zoned PR with densities up to 3 and 4 dwelling units an acre. Though there are subdivisions with higher densities nearby, they are accessed off of Shawd Road. The rezoning does not comply with the Comprehensive Plan's Implementation Policy 9.3 to focus growth in areas already served by adequate infrastructure. Knox County EPW has expressed concerns about additional significant development along this section of Ballcamp Pike. The subject property is also located 415 feet east of an elevated railroad crossing, which may restrict visibility for drivers exiting the subject property. Knox County does not have a capital improvement project plan for this section of Ballcamp Pike in the foreseeable future. For these reasons, staff recommends denial of the PR zone with up to 8 dwelling units an acre. Are there any questions?
Okay, can move on to the next one.
All right, item 27, 12-D 24RZ. This is a request to rezone an 11-acre property located on the west side of North Wooddale Road, north of Asheville Highway, from agricultural to planned residential with up to 6 dwelling units an acre. Access is from North Wooddale Road, a local street with a pavement width ranging from 17.5 to 19 feet within a 39-foot right-of-way. This request was brought before you today as community members have proposed including a conservation easement as a condition for the rezoning. Development trends in the area have primarily been residential and commercial in nature. Since the early 1980s, the surrounding area has experienced a steady transition from agricultural zoning to commercial and residential zoning. Commercial zoning has been concentrated along Asheville Highway, a major commercial corridor 950 feet south of the subject property. Adjacent to the subject property are single-family homes and undeveloped forested parcels. The construction of a 141-unit subdivision is underway 0.65 miles west of the subject property. A portion of the new subdivision abuts the subject property on the northwest side. The property's place type is suburban residential, which allows consideration of the PR zone with a density of 6 dwelling units an acre. The PR zone is partially related to the suburban residential place type, and per Appendix H of the Comprehensive Plan, additional approval criteria are required for partially related zones. The rezoning meets the first of these criteria as the allowable land uses in the PR zone, which include single-family, duplex, and townhouse developments, align with the preferred housing mix of the suburban residential place type. Shown is an example of a townhouse development with 6 dwelling units an acre. This specific development is slightly larger. It's 14 acres and located within the city, but it's just for an idea of what 6 dwelling units an acre would look like. The PR zone also provides flexibility for optional land development methods and encourages more imaginative solutions to environmental design problems. There are closed contours that could possibly be sinkholes on the western side of the property, concentrated near the southwestern corner. The rezoning complies with the Comprehensive Plan's Implementation Policy 5 to create neighborhoods with a variety of housing types and amenities in close proximity. As previously mentioned, the subject property is just north of Asheville Highway, a growing commercial corridor with retail amenities to support a rezoning of this site. The East Knox County Small Area Plan also recommends concentrating residential development near development corridors like Asheville Highway. For these reasons, staff recommends approval of the PR zone with up to 6 dwelling units an acre. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Adams?
Just, you said something about a conservation easement at the beginning? Or maybe I misheard you.
Yes, I did. So the community members essentially are stating that because the subject property has an undeveloped meadow, potentially proposing a conservation easement on the, let me pull up my laser. On this side of the subject property, roughly about 3.5 acres in size, to conserve the meadow that is there. And so that's something that the community member who is propositioning this is going to speak more about at the meeting.
Question about that. I mean, is that meadow area in the sinkhole area, is that the same, or are they just saying they want to preserve their neighbor's land for their view?
It is in the sinkhole area, but I did not see the sinkholes being there as a reason for the conservation easement.
Okay. I guess we'll hear from the applicant on it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. We will switch computers here. The next item is number 11. It's a special use for a car wash facility on Chapman Highway.
So the facility is proposed on the southwest corner of the intersection of Chapman Highway and Fort Dickerson Road. Staff is recommending approval of the special use. We have included it on the agenda because it includes an atypical master plan and because we have received some opposition. The property is a little over 2 acres. It is zoned CG2 with some HP overlay. The property includes 4 parcels under common ownership. Instead of combining all 4 parcels, the applicant is pursuing a master plan to keep the northern parcel, which is designated by Lot A in the image to the right, separate. The master plan has been approved by the City of Knoxville Engineering Department, and this plan will allow the car wash to be away from the intersection. A coffee shop or sandwich shop is contemplated for Lot 1, which would require a substantial alteration of the proposed driveway for the car wash. However, the feasibility of that use is not subject to this special use application. Here you can see the proposed plans and elevation drawings. The facility includes a 5,000 square feet structure that is placed lengthwise along Chapman Highway. Access will be via Fort Dickerson Road and Chapman Highway, with the latter being right in and right out only. The CG2 district is intended to provide for a mix of uses, encouraging mixed-use development in a pedestrian-oriented environment. While the proposed use is auto-centric, the development includes a sidewalk access from Chapman Highway as required by the zoning ordinance. This segment of Chapman Highway corridor includes several auto-oriented businesses. Most of these are designated as offices in this map. For example, there is a Shell gas station on the northeast corner of the intersection and an AutoZone store south of this property. The Chapman Highway Mixed-Use Special District recommends higher intensity mixed-use development that takes advantage of the proximity to downtown. The Planning Commission must find that the proposed use is consistent with and not in conflict with the adopted plans and policies. The Chapman Highway Corridor Study recommends that a new landscaping should be provided with each development, including street trees and landscaped front yards. The development provides the required foundation landscaping along Chapman Highway, which includes 3 trees and some shrubs along the highway on this section and also near the intersection. Staff is recommending approval of the special use with some additional landscaping conditions. This includes installing at least 2 additional trees along the highway to be consistent with the corridor study's recommendation. We are also recommending to landscape the center of the roundabout. The Knoxville Civil War Roundtable are in opposition of the proposed driveway on the Fort Dickerson Road. The access is approved by the City of Knoxville Engineering Department. The Planning Commission should consider the General Plans Development Policy 9.3, which stipulates that the context of a new development, including the scale and compatibility, should not impact existing neighborhoods and communities. Happy to answer any question.
The picture that you're showing right now, Samuel, did you speak in your articulation just now about what the property is right there to the right?
To the right.
Are you referring to the park?
Yeah.
It's Fort Dickerson Park.
Did he speak to that in his case just now?
I think it's in the staff report, but I'm not.
In the staff report, we have addressed that they are proposing some landscaping to provide a buffer from that. So the 4 trees and the shrubs proposed in the right-of-way, these are not required by the zoning ordinance. The applicant is proposing that to provide a buffer.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. Agenda item number 38. Wait, I'm sorry. Number 40. Apologize.
So this is a concept plan and development plan for a 23-unit townhouse subdivision. A little bit of background, the 10-acre property was rezoned to PR at 2.99 dwelling unit in February 2024. The Planning Commission approved a concept plan for 6 lots in Unit 1 that you can see highlighted in blue. Unit 2 proposes 23 new townhouses, and the existing house on the property will remain. Staff is recommending approval with some conditions. The applicant did not provide elevation drawings, but the agenda packet includes some example images. The townhouses may include a rooftop deck along the rear side of the units. This is an example image of that rooftop deck that may or may not be proposed. From the aerial image, we can see most of the property is forested land right now. The property has the rural conservation place type in the comprehensive plan. Attached dwellings are listed as secondary uses in the land use mix of rural conservation place type. The place type also recommends preservation of 50% or more open space. The property has the hillside protection overlay for almost its entirety, which recommends a maximum disturbance budget of 6.3 acres. The steepest portion is at the eastern side, as you can see on this map. Staff recommends a condition that the land disturbance shall not exceed the recommended disturbance budget. The concept plan includes a variance request to reduce the K value of road A from 20 to 20 near the intersection. Staff recommends approval of the variance because of the topographical challenges. There is about 29 feet elevation change from the intersection at Black Road to the middle of Road A. The applicant is also requesting an alternative design standard to reduce the frontage of 4 lots from 25 feet to 20 feet. The frontage are highlighted in red in this image. The subdivision regulation requires that the Planning Commission may approve such request subject to 2 requirements. On the bottom left, you see a screenshot from the subreg that stipulates the requirements. Here, the subject lots meets the front setback requirement. The development proposes 2 parking spaces for each townhouse, but does not provide additional guest parking. Instead of creating a separate off-street parking space, staff recommends increasing the pavement width of Road A from 24 feet to 26 feet to accommodate on-street guest parking. This is one of the conditions of the concept plan approval. Staff thinks that this will result in less disturbance within the HP area. The applicant is requesting a reduction of the peripheral boundary from 35 feet to 15 feet along the entirety of the western boundary, along the rear boundary from the corner up to lot 20, and along the eastern boundary next to the existing barn. Staff is recommending approval of the reduction except for the southwest corner, where staff is recommending to retain the 35 feet boundary. The applicant's request that differs from staff recommendation is marked with this orange line that you can see on this image. We think that the site plan do not demonstrate a need for this reduction. We are also recommending a condition to provide a Class B landscape yard to buffer the abutting single-family subdivision from this more intensive development. Should the Planning Commission approve applicant's request to reduce the peripheral boundary along this side, staff will recommend that the landscape buffer be extended along that portion as well. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. It's probably maybe more for Steve at engineering. So behind those, I guess lots 14 through 30, I mean, all that is running down the road. I mean, has engineering looked at that and figured out a way to handle the stormwater rolling off the back towards those subdivisions?
We've not looked at it in great detail, John, but we would ask them to put in a swell or something, convey the water down to their detention pond.
Right. That's the most logical, I think, way to handle it, because you don't want to flood the guys in the cul-de-sacs below you. Whatever we can do to avoid that.
Yeah, and it'll probably help the people down below because there's a sinkhole there.
Right.
I believe that's lot 23 or 13, I can't see it. The larger lot has a sinkhole on it that is now it overtops and floods out in the street. So this will cut off some of that water and put it into the pond and take it the other way.
Right, and retain it and hold it for a little bit. I think that's good. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will turn it over to Mr. Reynolds for the next 4 cases. Starting off with agenda item number 38. This is phase 1 of a potentially large subdivision.
Yes, thank you. So this is item number 38. It's the Rowan Farm subdivision proposal. This request is 70 lots on about 46.8 acres that are zoned planned residential. Results in about one and a half dwelling units per acre. The property is zoned planned residential up to 3 dwelling units per acre. That was rezoned back in 2020 from agricultural. And what makes this a bit unique is that this is a phase one of a project that includes, a larger property of more than 250 acres. So if you do the math, with 3 dwelling units per acre, you're looking at north of 300 or 750 potential dwelling units. So this is just the first 70 lots with access directly to Swafford Road. The property, even though it is fairly large, it has very limited road frontage. They are accessing their one point on Swafford Road, which is on the northwest side of the site. They actually do have frontage on Samley Road as well, which is on the south side of Beaver Creek, so it would require a creek crossing there. But as of right now, the only access is off of Swafford. We are recommending approval of the request, subject to 16 conditions. A couple of those conditions to note are that any increase in the number of lots beyond what we have on here will require a new traffic study, a new full traffic study, and as well as new traffic counts. And because this request only has one access point to Swafford Road, which is a local road, and if you know the area, it's not like a direct route to a very an improved road system. So we're concerned with the number of lots that could potentially come off with a single access. We want to limit to 150 lots until they do provide a secondary access point. So on the right, you see the general location. This is in kind of like in the Solway, Hardin Valley area. So to the right, let me get my pointer on here. Yeah, so this is the full property in blue. What's in red is their proposed area development. Pell City Parkway to the east, Hardin Valley to the south, and Samley Road. The Hardin Valley schools are down here. So Swafford Road, just to give you context, kind of is an extension of Steel Road. It kind of winds its way back this direction, and their access is up here in the northwest corner. You can see on the image on the left, which is the current aerials, that is a fairly, it was an agricultural property. So it is cleared for the most part. It's in the rural living land use class or place type. Another part of the property to the southeast is in the rural conservation area. I'm not going to go through this to any great degree. If you have any questions about the place type, feel free to ask. The hillside protection area, we only looked at the area for this part of the development, though it is a much larger property. You see that most of it is in the green, and hillside protection is kind of limited to this northern section. And also I want to point out there's a fairly significant floodway and floodplain along Beaver Creek, and they do intend to take advantage of that floodplain, excuse me, as part of their amenity area. So the existing house on the property will be retained for an amenity with about 5 acres around it, and then across their new internal road on the creek side, that will also be a common area. So it should be an interesting opportunity for them there. Just to help give a little bit of context of how this development sits on the property, just kind of overlay the two again so you can see how the lot layout works with the floodplain and floodway, and also the hillside protection area up on the north side. So you can see how this street system will continue. So again, this red area is where phase one is, and then this rest of the property down here is still potential for future development. This is not a condition added as of yet, but it will be added before Thursday, is that Swafford Road needs to be at least, wide to at least 18 feet wide from their entrance, which is about here, back to Gwynn Road, which is a collector street. It's It's measuring close to 18 feet now, so there's a possibility they won't need to do anything, but we won't add that condition just to make sure that that road is at least 18 feet wide back to Gwynn. So as I mentioned, we're recommending approval of the 70 lot phase 1 of the Roland Farms subdivision, subject to 16 conditions.
Question looking towards like phase 2, which I know isn't what's up here now, but since they're only developing it at 1.5 dwelling units an acre, could phase 2 conceivably be greater than 3 so that the overall average is 3? Is that how that works?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Just to comment on that too, I think probably the inclusion of 10 acres, that's the common area around the house, 5 and 5, roughly 10, is probably diluting that number a little bit, because those lots look to be about, they're 60, 65 feet wide, which is the market these days. I love that because I'm very familiar with this property. I've walked it before, and the house is beautiful. It's a big old Victorian, not Victorian, but it's old, beautiful old large house with a pool. I think that's awesome that they're saving that as an amenity, and then over on the creek side, all that area over there retained for recreation. It's great.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 33, which is one, yes, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you for letting us know.
Okay, so this is agenda item number 33. It's a Tipton Station subdivision. It's a request for 342 detached house lots on 85.63 acres. And I made a note that this is acreage outside of the TVA flowage easement. It's kind of an odd thing. If you look at the location of this property, it's not really near a lake, but it's kind of interesting that the flowage easement actually goes pretty far up Stock Creek here. And you'll see also that there's discussion in the staff report about if they're able to show that this is not a flowage easement, because there's some kind of question whether it is or isn't, that they could come back and get more, potentially a few more lots. But as of right now, this plan, I think they had to remove maybe one lot, if I recall correctly. Which brought it down to 342. So if you look at the plan, it says 343, that's why. So the property was rezoned to plan residential up to 4 dwelling units per acre with 2 conditions. One being that the peripheral setback be retained, 35-foot peripheral be retained, so they're not reducing that. And also that a 15-foot non-disturbance buffer be implemented around the external boundary of the site. Or it did give an option that if they did need to disturb it, that a type B landscape screen be provided. So that'll be handled during the design plan phase, once they determine if they need to disturb into that area or not. And then also the 70 acres south of Stock Creek to be put in a conservation easement. So there's a condition that that be put in conservation before phase 1 is platted. We are recommending approval up to with 17 conditions, and a couple to note are improvements to Martin Mill Pike intersection, and to complete a phase 2 environmental study. And I'll go over that in just a moment. Again, so this is the location of the property. Maryville Pike intersection is off to the west. Martin Mill Pike intersection is just to the east. And then we have Bonnie Cade Elementary and South Doyle High off to the east as well. And just so you know, the conservation area is south of the creek, which I'm highlighting here. The property is primarily in the rural conservation place type. It's almost 50-50. The property to the south is actually pretty large. It is in the rural living place type. The rural conservation place type recommends clustering and having 50% open space. In this case, and actually in another one, we're kind of looking at what they are conserving, which isn't necessarily in the rural conservation, but it is in the on the property. So in this case, they're getting close to that 50% with just the rural living part of the property on the south side. And that, it will be in a permanent conservation easement, so it's not something that could potentially be developed in the future. It will be permanently preserved. So the environmental study, this property was owned by a TNT manufacturer and stored explosives on site. There's no indication that necessarily that they've manufactured anything on site, but it was definitely a storage facility. So those little buildings that you see along this driveway is where they stored the material. And there was some deed restrictions for adjacent properties to have houses far enough away from those facilities that, you know, it wasn't a danger and such, but it's no longer used for that purpose, but the buildings are still there. They did a Phase 1 environmental study, and TDEC, after reviewing that, recommended that they complete a Phase 2. My understanding is that the applicant is, you know, pursuing the Phase 2. It will take time for them to get to that point, but we're recommending a condition that the Phase 2 be done during the design plan phase before platting, and anything that comes out of that Phase 2 study, if they do find that remediation is needed, that be done per TDEC's requirements. This property only has one access point to Tipton Station. Because of that and because of the number of lots, we are recommending, and they are providing a fairly large boulevard road all the way, pretty much halfway back to the property. There'll be a sidewalk on one side of that boulevard, and I just kind of highlighted where those little structures were with these circles, but it doesn't really mean anything else in context of this request. Tipton Station at the Martin Mill Pike intersection is really what's needed for improvement. There's different options, but the developer is going to work with the county to make that happen. There's two potential options, one being just implementing turn lanes, another is actually installing a roundabout, because we have this little side road that comes in so close to this intersection that a roundabout is really the best way to handle that, but that'll be determined during the design plan phase. So recommending approval with the 17 conditions. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a question on the conservation easement that'll be put up there. Will that effectively be like managed by the HOA going forward? Is that how that would happen?
Typically, it's held by an outside agency.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So there's no necessarily contemplated use of that easement by the homeowners that would be here?
They would have to cross the creek to get to it, which
Okay.
is a pretty substantial
Right.
crossing. It wouldn't necessarily prohibit that, depending on how the conservation easement is.
Right,
written
but
out.
it's not like an amenity that's proposed as part of this plan or anything?
Not that I wouldn't prohibit it, but
Yeah.
it's not,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we will move on to agenda item number 36, Masana Investments.
So this is on Asheville Highway. It's 213 lots on 43.27 acres. And it's zoned planned residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre. So this is another situation where, and I'll go over this in a bit more detail, but where the property is split into actually 3 different place types, so it makes it really fun to review. And it also has 3 different zoning classifications on it. Primarily, it's zone plan residential up to 5 dwelling units per acre. There is a little bit of OA office park zoning, and it's also already partially built out with an office clinic. Only mention that because the entrance road goes through the office zoning part of the property, but other than the road going through there, that is kind of a separate thing altogether. It is on this parcel, though. They will have to parcel that off. Off to the northwest corner, it's zoned CA General Business. It's 3.27 acres. Their road system, again, does go through it, so Road B makes a intersection with Asheville Highway in the northwest corner, and then Road D comes through. I do anticipate seeing something on this in the next month or two. It's up to the applicant, but they do intend to do something with that property. And again, residential is now more, I guess, there are more residential options in CA now than there used to be. Let's put it that way. I just highlighted two other things. There's two variance requests, a reduction of a vertical curve K value at the northwest intersection, or near the northwest intersection with Asheville Highway, to go from a K of 25 to K20, which just means that it's a little bit sharper curve, and it's a crest curve, so the curve is going down. It's more like, it's not creating a bowl, let's put it that way, it's creating a hump. And it shouldn't cause any issues with sight distance or traffic as it's near an intersection. The other one is a broken back tangent at this intersection for Road E. And strangely, it's kind of an odd situation where the tangent's actually through the intersection. So a broken back curve is two curves that go in the same direction, and the tangent is a straight section between the two. So it kind of looks like a U would be like the most extreme version of a broken back curve. But we don't see any issues with this because, I mean, it has a stop condition, so all the cars have to stop in the middle of this anyway, or at least the cars on Road E have to stop. There shouldn't be any safety issues here. We are recommending approval with conditions. There are improvements to Asheville Highway that need to be made per TDOT's requirements. Put a sidewalk on Road B and Road A, like a small, basically connecting these two access points. And then a type C landscape screening along Asheville Highway, consistent with the East Knox Community Plan recommendation of keeping a rural character in the area. It's also consistent with the similar attached development almost across the street from last month. But just quick locations. This is out in the Carter community. You can see off to the east is Carter Elementary, Carter High and Middle, and Andrew Johnson Highway. As I mentioned, this does have three different place types. It has the corridor mixed use along the frontage. It has the rural conservation just south of that, and then the southernmost part of the property is suburban residential. If you, as I just mentioned, the rural conservation place type recommends maintaining 50% open space. Again, this is one of those situations where the RC part is getting developed almost fully, and there's a lot more preservation in a different place type. In this case, it's going to be a suburban residential place type. So I kind of split the plan up here. So this is the delineating line between suburban residential to the south and the rural conservation to the north. There's a fairly large area of common area along Strawberry Plains Pike. So it really is hitting that 50% threshold. It's just in a different part of the property. This is probably a more appropriate part of the property to maintain it, since Strawberry Plains Pike has more of a rural character anyways. They are requesting a reduction of the frontage, minimum frontage standard of 25 feet to 20 feet. Because of this, guest parking is required per the subdivision regulations. It's kind of hard to see here, I apologize. This is Exhibit C in the packet, so you can go, it's kind of broken into different plans, so it's 3 different sheets. So I tried to combine them together, but it kind of didn't turn out perfect. So there's 20 off-street parking spaces in the southwest corner of the townhouses. And then the blue boxes are what they're saying can accommodate on-street parking along the existing curb line or future curb line. So that's how their plan is to provide guest parking. Again, so staff is recommending approval with the conditions noted. Any questions?
Okay. We will move on to our last item on our agenda, which is 46. This is Tommy Hunt. Should look familiar.
Okay. So we did see this one in the summer. Planning Commission So this is a Easy Stop gas station. The current request is for a gas station and a restaurant in the CN zone, neighborhood commercial zone, which both of those uses do require use on review approval by the Planning Commission. In the previous application, I'm just going to run through some of the changes from that application. The original application had a larger building. It was 7,715 square feet. So this has been reduced to 4,975, which is below the 5,000 square feet as stipulated in the CN zone. The Board of Zoning Appeals did make a determination in the summer as well that 5,000 square feet is the maximum building size. So it's not only business size, it is building size. 5,000 square feet is the maximum. Because there was some discussion of whether it was only related to businesses or if you had a bigger building than 5,000, if it was just limited to 5,000 square feet per business, but the building could be bigger. So that's been determined. The building is also cannot exceed 5,000 square feet. They've removed the drive-through facility. This plan does have a walk-up window for orders, but it doesn't require any special approval from the Planning Commission. It's just they've changed that to a walk-up window. And the area dedicated to the restaurant is substantially reduced from about 3,000 square feet to about 500. Other than that, the site plan hasn't changed a whole lot, but I'll go over that in just a second. Some conditions of note. This first one is the same condition as staff recommended last time and the Planning Commission approved. There should be no more than 4 gas pumps, dispensers, with no more than 2 points of sale per pump. Number 7 is similar but changed from our last recommendation. So in the summer, recommendation was for all lighting fixtures to be no taller than 15 feet tall, site lighting fixtures. This recommendation is basically the same, but saying no pole lights should be taller than 15 feet unless within 100 feet of the rear property line, unless there's shields provided. So basically blocking the light source from adjacent structures or adjacent properties. So it gives them some option in how to handle the lighting. And the number 11 is what the Planning Commission conditioned on top of staff's recommended conditions, which was to have an archaeologist on site doing when they start grading activities. So make sure there's not any graves located on the site because there was concern with potential graves on the site. Just a quick comparison of the previous site plan to the new one. On the left, you can see the building was larger, has 2 lanes that wrap around the building. Parking is pretty much the same. In this case, there's really not much change other than the building got smaller. There's still 2 lanes that wrap around the building. Instead of it being one way, they're showing it as 2-way. Other than that, nothing really has changed. Just to give you an idea of what the floor plan, what we're calling the restaurant is this area here, and really it's more like an order counter with the necessary cooking equipment to make what they plan to sell. But other than that, it's a pretty limited area. The convenience store alley hasn't changed much in size. And just the landscaping plan is essentially the same, just updated. Really nothing significant to change there or to note. Again, so this is the area where it's located. If you're familiar, this is Concord Road, North Shore Drive. The Village of Concord is to the east. Kingston Pike is up towards the north. I'm not going to get into the zoning too much, but Farragut is across the road on Concord. So this is right on the edge of Farragut. Second Drive does need to be widened back to their entrance, and beyond their entrance is a little bit. Staff is recommending that the widening only be limited to what's necessary for their access point. There is a historic cemetery off to the east that, again, I kind of noted that there was concern that potentially that cemetery expanded onto this site. And And just want to reiterate that, the intent of this zone, which is to provide opportunities to locate limited retail and service uses in a manner convenient to and yet not disruptive to established residential neighborhoods, is intended to provide the recurring shopping and personal service needs of nearby residential areas, and development should be compatible with the character of the adjacent neighborhood. As we've mentioned, the main item that staff still has the most concern with is the amount of pumps and how that impacts the area and whether it's truly neighborhood serving. You will hear from, I'm sure, from the applicant on other CN zone properties and number of pumps and things. There's nothing in the ordinance that says what, how big of a gas station is it's not limiting the number of pumps, but at some point, you kind of know that something's bigger than it's probably intended to be. So I kind of located two different, or one other location. So Concord, at Choteau and North Shore, there's a Weigels that has 8 pumps, if I remember correctly. A neighborhood, what you call make a neighborhood area. It's probably about 5,000 to 9,000 people in the Choteau area, including, north of North Shore. Got about 5,000 people. Should go out about a mile, not quite a mile and a quarter, but that kind of gives you this radius, pulls in those people. There's one other gas station in that general area, which is here. At the Concord location, you see if you just use the same circle size, you're going to end up with less people in it, but you also have a lot of overlap with a more regional type shopping area like Kingston Pike. So we just don't see how this type of facility on Second Street next to Concord is really the appropriate scale. So we feel that the number of pumps should be reduced to be more compatible with the neighborhood that it's in. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Mike, did BCA look at the number of pumps, or did they just look at the building size?
Just the building size.
Okay.
Yeah, I get, since we're talking about the gas pumps, yeah, I'm having trouble following the logic, I guess. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with the markets at Choteau out there where we've got a Weigels that has 16 points of sale in a lesser area, I think. I mean, there's Montgomery Cove, I mean, there's $1.5 million, $2 million houses across the street. And it works fine. It's not offensive. They love it out there, actually. Just all of it. But my concern would be, from a point of sale perspective, I mean, these guys are scaling it back, and the decision was made that it needed to be scaled back, so it did get scaled back. But I feel like they've done a lot and made a lot of concessions in trying to make it fit into the neighborhood. I just struggle with the number of gas pumps being necessarily restricted on it. I mean, because you want it to be there, but you want it to be successful as well, so you don't want to set them up for failure by choking them down too hard. But if you compare it directly to the Choteau area, I think there's more, it's closer, and there's more individual residents closer to it, and it has a higher amount of gas pumps, which in our experience is not an issue. Out there where you have a 5-lane road that the TDOT just spent $15 or $20 million on widening into that roundabout, and there's going to be more improvements coming up and down there. It's just more heavily traveled, that type of thing. Anyway, I don't know. I'm having trouble understanding why we would limit the pumps to 4.
I would say that one difference between this site and probably Markets at Choteau is how this property gets accessed, which is it has a right-in, right-out off of Concord, which is a significantly traveled road. There is a central median. which prohibits left turns directly into the site. So anybody going to the site then has, if you're going south on Concord towards North Shore, your only way to get to the site is to either do a U-turn on Concord and go in there, right in, right out access, or to go onto Second, which, leads into the neighborhood, Concord neighborhood. And being it's the only historically zoned area in Knox County outside of single-use sites, it is a unique situation. And let's say you're going to hear it from the neighborhood. The Easy Stop is okay with the idea of trying to limit left turns onto Second as much as possible, to limit cut through through the village and Concord, because their roads are fairly narrow. The neighborhood will probably be requesting again that there be some type of hardened, curbed, right out only onto Second Avenue or on Second Street. So.
Commissioner Perez? Did you have a question?
Yes. What does staff recommend as number of pumps?
4.
4? So right now they're proposing 4 now?
They're proposing 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And remind me, what would be the protocol if the archaeological findings do present unmarked graves?
I think that there's a process through the state they have to go through if they want to move them, or they could kind of leave everything as is.
Commissioner Huber?
Just one final follow-up question. Mike, do you know what the traffic count is on Concord right there?
If you give me a moment, I can find out.
While Mr. Reynolds is looking that up, is there any other items that you all wanted to discuss? No? Okay.
Sorry, don't mean to delay things. I just had the question.
It's like, unfortunately, I can't see what I'm trying to do here. So, yeah, I might have to get back to you on that.
And you can look it up later. It'll be fine for an answer on Thursday. I just trying to understand the amount of cars that are on that section of road versus the section of North Shore in front of Markets at Chodo is basically my question. So, but we can talk about it Thursday. It's fine if you find it before then.